Welcome to all of you from across the Southwest and beyond to celebrate what is achieving 100% green plans. So we are here to talk about that today and to celebrate these strategies that will help us support getting a net zero NHS across the region. We know a climate emergency is threatening our very ability to live healthy lives, and we know the impact of climate change will mean that we have to deliver services differently. So the NHS is also contributing to climate change in its emissions, and that simply isn't good enough. So by tackling this, we are going to be saving lives and heightening patients' experience. I'm Nikki Philpott. I'm the very, very new Head of Sustainability and Net Zero here in the Southwest region, and I'm chairing today's event, which promises to be what I hope to be an incredibly stimulating discussion. But before I start, I have to do some initial housekeeping. So we've decided to use Teams and not Teams Live, and that means that it's very interactive. It means that we can come off mute, we can talk to people, we can ask questions. But it does mean that we're going to have to be very careful about keeping ourselves muted when we're not speaking so that we don't put different speakers off. After Nick and Guy, our two keynote speakers, have spoken, we'll be taking questions from you. So you can put your hand up and you'll be called by Charlotte, one of the Greener team, to ask your question. We've also got speakers from across the system, and we're asking you to put your questions in chat for them. If you like them, we can see that they're supported, and Tobin will be selecting a couple of the most interesting and the most popular questions for our speakers at the end of those sessions after every 10 minutes. To increase our interaction, we're also using something called Menti. Now, I haven't used this before. I'm sure many of you have. Helen, who's operating the slides and from our regional comms team, we'll be putting some questions in the chat, and what you have to do is you have to click on Menti, you have to open it on a different screen or on your phone and answer those questions periodically, and then we'll share with you the results at the end, and I'm hoping that that will be a really exciting thing to do. We are developing a conference pack, and this will be sent to you after the conference. It'll contain the Q&As, the presentations, all the additional links that our speakers think it's important for you to know about and that you might find useful. And this will go on YouTube, which means we're recording the session. So I just wanted to let you know that. And we're really tight on time today. So I'm going to be jumping in to make sure we run to time and we run smoothly. So can I ask our speakers to remember that and to please be concise with the questions that you have to speakers. And finally, I'd like us to make some noise about this out there in the world on social media. So do put in hashtag Greener NHS Southwest or SW or hashtag NHS Southwest. And Helen will put that in the chat and we can start talking about this outside of here too. So that's the boring bit over, and I'm pleased to say we're actually to time. So I'd like to first of all introduce you to our first speaker. I'm delighted to welcome Nick Watts to this event. Nick is the NHS's first Chief Sustainability Officer. He's been leading the Greener NHS programme for nearly 2 years, and I'm delighted that he'll be taking some questions after this session. So without further ado, I'd like you to jump on, Nick.
Fine, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Nick, thank you.
Where the hell am I? I'm in some weird room, some weird basement conference room somewhere up in the middle of London. I'm sorry, I couldn't be in some weird conference basement room down in the southwest. It would be much the same in the room, but then I'd have a much, much nicer time the second I left and went out to the pub this evening with a couple of you. Next time. I first really got involved in climate change, the links between climate change and human health, 2007, just as it was starting to become cool. In fact, it was at one of those COP conferences, the UN Conference of the Parties to the FCCC. I think it was COP 13 in Bali, in Indonesia. Then you could fit the entirety of the world's interest in the links between health and climate change. You could fit all of us around a table that's only a little bit bigger than this one that I'm at. There were 6 of us there. I was a very, very recently graduated junior doctor, and a couple of others. Probably a few more scattered out across the world that we hadn't quite found yet because Twitter hadn't invented itself quite yet. But the number was 5, 6. earlier today, I was at London's regional event. You'll be pleased to know that they did not have 115 people coming along. The Southwest has blown them out of the water. It warms my heart. It genuinely really excites me. The fact that there are 115 health professionals in the Southwest of England alone that care desperately about this stuff, care enough to show up to an event like this. It is damn inspirational. Nikki, Richard, Tobin, Charlotte, you guys all know that this stuff happens not by accident. It happens because of the hard, passionate, excited work of a small number of people reaching out to friends across the system. Well done. A week or two ago, in fact, the day that the Health and Care Bill became the Health and Care Act of 2022, I was out in Frimley, another region of the NHS. Don't worry, not as good as the Southwest, once again. Talking to their newly formed integrated care system, who are really kicking some goals when it comes to all things sustainability. Really quite impressive. The people leading the charge there were telling me, Nick, 3 things matter: autonomy, capacity and capability, and relatedness. Big word, so I translate relatedness into fun. It strikes me that the problems we face, if you want to decarbonize something as big as the NHS, they are not technological. They are not technical. We have the expertise right here in this room to take this challenge on. We have the ability, we're the NHS, God damn it, we have the ability to answer those complex questions. There are complex questions, but we have the ability to take that on. And it is not economic, it is not financial. We know that we need additional capital to run at this problem at full speed, but we also know that we can act on 80% of our emissions profile without significant additional resource. And we know that where we do need that, it pays for itself in half a heartbeat. The problem, the challenge we face is, how do you get people excited? How do you use that combination of autonomy, capacity and capability, and relatedness, fun, to deliver 1.4 million high quality care, low carbon healthcare decisions? That's the challenge, right? Don't let anyone ever tell you we don't have all the technological answers. Don't let anyone ever tell you we don't have the cash. Nonsense. Those were the answers. That was the barriers we could face back in the 1990s. The world has moved on. When it comes to autonomy, it was an interesting moment. One of the things that I remember being told very, very early on when I showed up, and God, Nikki, 2 years. You're right. We need to feel as though it is our duty to act on this. Healthcare professionals need to be given permission to tackle climate change directly. Since that moment has started, you will see net zero built into, you will see sustainability built into all of the incredibly boring documents, I'm sorry, planning guidance, the provider license, the standard contract for acute care, and the standard contract for primary care. You will see it everywhere you look. But more importantly, you will see it on the face of the Health and Care Act of 2022, the first piece anywhere in the world, the first piece of national legislation to, on the face of the bill, directly address the health profession's response to climate change, to stop asking nicely. This isn't something that you just put on the side while you have your main meal. This is core business in the beating heart of the NHS, a responsibility to tackle climate change. It's there, quite frankly, because we asked for it. It's there, quite frankly, because we know that this is our responsibility. It's something we want to run at. So new duties imposed, but requested for every single trust, every single foundation trust, and every single integrated care system in the country. And importantly, also new duties for NHS England, because mutual accountability is critical here. With those new duties, yes, of course, have to come powers as well. And so new statutory guidance powers to help us break into new discussions about legal mechanisms, about payment and provider license mechanisms. Everywhere you look, I don't think anyone now gets to say, I would, if only it were part of my responsibility. In fact, it's the Royal Cornwall Trust, isn't it? One of my favorite innovations, building this into the heart of every single job description for everyone they hire down there. God, that is cool. So autonomy matters, Capacity, capability matters. Capacity is a hot topic in the NHS, hey? 667 million pounds. No, sorry, get it right. 677 million pounds invested into low carbon healthcare, invested into our acute care system, invested into our primary care system in the last 18 months alone. The response to net zero, the response to climate change, don't let anyone ever tell you it decreases capacity. This only brings in capacity, brings in additional investment to the NHS. What do we know about that funding? We know that it has increased the size of the NHS budget. It hasn't come at the expense of anything else. It has increased the size of the NHS budget. We also know that in January 2022, our energy bill was 457 million pounds. We know that as of today, it is 1.4 billion pounds. A lot has been going on in the world in the last 6 months. We know that if we hadn't invested, as we have over the last 2 years, just in the investment from the last 2 years alone, that energy bill wouldn't have been 1.4 billion, would have been between 1.9 and 2.1 billion pounds. This stuff just makes good economic sense. So the capacity matters, but the capability matters as well. And Nikki, you're entirely right. That's why every single trust in the region having its own net zero strategy, having taken a serious look at what sustainability means for them, means for their patients, means for their clinicians, personalized it, internalized it, localized it. That's why that matters. They're not 212 boring reports. The geekiest thing I think I've ever said, I said this morning, and I actually reflected on it on the train, and I mean it. One of my favorite things to do, and I genuinely encourage you guys to go and have a crack at this. Go and read a random trust's green plan. You will look through it and you will be filled with a sense of pride. You will see in there things you go, yes, of course, that makes sense. Good, tackling the low-hanging fruit. You will see people stealing some cool ideas from trusts from across other regions of the country and across the world. And then you will, like, promise you will see an idea in there and you will go, oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that. That is so fantastic. You'll respond with, maybe that'll work, I don't know, but God, it's so great that someone is having a crack at that. Someone is figuring out whether or not that is a solution that the NHS can really run at. The capability and the capacity matter, but finally, fun matters. There's a thing my rugby coach used to talk about a fair bit, and I'm not going to talk much about the rugby after the results of last Saturday, so I won't accept any questions from anyone from England on the rugby at the moment. We'll see how the next match goes on Saturday. Go and look at the team that is having the most fun. The team that is having the most fun, that is enjoying themselves, that's the team that's going to win. It's important that as we run at this problem, we are having fun. It's important that we are learning. It's important that we are working with our friends, with our colleagues, that we're enjoying ourselves. And so to take on some of those new duties, and yes, to address some of the high demands that those green plans have set for the system. Last week we announced, and you didn't see it on the front page of every single newspaper, you could be forgiven. There was a lot going on in the news last week. But I'll tell you now, we announced a new Healthier Futures Fund. If you are a nurse out in the community, if you are an endocrinologist doing something clever and complex that I never fully understood in med school and my years of junior doctoring, if you are a pharmacist, a physio, thinking about how you discharge a patient, and you have wondered, God, does it really have to be this way? We've always done it this way, but surely we could do it just a little bit better to the left, and that would make things better for our patients, and it would probably reduce the emissions of the healthcare system. If you're one of those people, then we have some funding available, £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. The conditions, the criteria are really, really simple. You've got to directly address patient care. You have to directly improve the health of your patients. You have to directly tackle the climate crisis. And you have to learn something, you have to shout about it, and you have to have fun. The challenge we face is not a technological challenge. The problem is not that we don't have the perfect data available today. If anyone ever tells you that they don't have enough information, they would if only they had all of the data. Nonsense. We have enough to act today. It is not about having all of the answers from 2022 through to 2045. Nonsense. The NHS can figure that out. It is not about the costs of this challenge. The NHS can run at this. We have demonstrated already that we are able to do this at a cost-effective, damn impressive route. The challenge is whether or not we can mobilize 1.4 million healthcare professionals to take this on. A combination of autonomy, capacity, and capability, and a bit of fun is what gives me confidence, what gets me excited about this. And say it again, Richard, Nikki, Charlotte, Tobin, everyone that has been working on this stuff for not just 1 year, not just 2 years, for 10 years, 20 years running at this challenge. It's the fact that 100% every single trust in the region, every single trust in the country now has a strategy. That is what gets me excited. That's what gives me confidence that we are going to have a damn good crack at whether or not we hit net zero by 2045. Are we going to get there? 50-50. But I would absolutely put my money on the NHS being the world's first healthcare system to hit net zero. Thank you very much. Congratulations. One hell of an event you guys have lined up. It's going to be exciting. How's that, Nikki?
That's great, Nick. Thank you so much. As passionate as ever. And we're going to ask our audience now to ask you questions, because I think it would be really good to kind of get you for 10 more minutes, if that's okay. So, Charlotte, over to you. Has anyone got their hand up?
Can I also request, please, no questions along the lines of, Nick, why is it that Nikki is so fantastic? Or no questions along the nothing friendly. Let's have some complex discussion. Let's talk about some of the issues that we're trying to tackle. That makes this more interesting.
Thank you. Yes, we've got Catherine Brown, who's got her hand up.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for that. I'm just interested, you quoted a lot of figures on the costs of energy and things like that. Is that just related to acute trusts? I think I work in primary care and we really struggle with energy and estates. And I'm just wondering what support there might be out there for us and what you're working on in those areas.
Sure. So the energy bill I'm talking about, yeah, that is just the acute care, because you can imagine that is the bill that personally shows up on our desk, though you're entirely right to point out that the bill is significantly larger than that, not just primary care, not just with our GPs, right, across all of primary care and across all of social care as well. Very roughly, we know that the ratio of cost savings I'm talking about there, they pretty much scale, and they scale in both directions. In fact, they get a little more favorable as you get a little smaller, interestingly. There's one hell of a lot going on in primary care. In particular, I've been so impressed, and look, people on this call will be bored of talking about inhalers. Fair enough, I'm kind of bored of talking about inhalers as well. Friend of mine reminded me, though, you must repeat your core message, you must repeat your target, you must repeat it again and again and again. And after years and years of repeating it, you probably will have reached about 20, 30 people. And so you just go on damn repeating it. Inhalers are responsible for 2% of the NHS's full emissions profile. We've invested £26 million out into primary care. Direct money for GP practices, for asthma nurses to buy the time, to buy the capacity to have those conversations. We don't have the full data in just yet, but some of the preliminary stuff we've had from our good friend, Mr. Goldacre, suggests that actually this scheme is running almost twice as fast as we thought it might. I haven't answered your question, Catherine. You asked a specific question about the primary care estate, and I don't have a specific answer about the primary care estate because you will know the legal complexities that actually make it borderline illegal for the NHS to actually invest in the vast majority of the primary care estate. But what I can say is where we are able to invest in our primary care colleagues, we absolutely are. In fact, that is one of our biggest flagship programs.
Thank you. We'll go to Sam Willits next.
Hi, Nick. So in the southwest, Bristol was the first area to declare a climate emergency with a target of 2030. And a lot of the rest of the southwest and other cities have followed with that 2030 target, because we believe that's actually what we need to achieve. Do you think we are going to go fast enough? And in some ways, is the national target causes a real difficulty because it being slower than what we're trying to achieve, it in some way holds us back. Do you think we're going fast enough?
Oh, I love that question. That's such a good question. So politely asked as well, Sam. Complex. So, number one, is it fast enough? No. Right? Is the NHS's national target fast enough? 2045? No. Is 2030 fast enough? Quite frankly, no. Right? And this is all from the context of 1992 was when the FCCC, when the Framework Convention was signed. It came into force 2 years later, 1994, Kyoto Protocol, 1997, Paris Agreement, 2015, etc., 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 etc. We're not starting from a standing start, but we're a little slow to come to the table as a profession, the healthcare profession, right? Other parts of the economy have been running at this for a little while longer. So whenever anyone asks me, is it fast enough? My response is almost always no, never, right? And that's sometimes why I'm not actually that worried about having the precise data for what your full carbon footprint is for every tiny little piece of it, because quite frankly, if you're using it to assess progress, the answer, no matter what, will always be run faster, always. Let me talk about the 2045 target for the NHS. Now, number one, it's important to point out that this covers not just our direct emissions, it covers everything. Scope 1, 2, and 3, more ambitious than anything else you will see anywhere in government by an order of magnitude globally. So it's important to point out the ambition and the discrepancy of the scope there. Number two, it was set to be as fast as we thought was feasible, acknowledging that it would have to come forward. Right, and we didn't want to have too much of what was in that target be uncertain. So what is there at the moment is we have certainty and visibility over about 92% of our emissions reduction. There is 8% there that we have as, look, it's kind of called offset, but in my mind, I think of it as just the stuff we haven't solved yet, and we'll need to find a way to further reduce emissions. I would fully intend and fully hope to see that target come forward when we gain more certainty over it. The challenge you face when you're doing something for the NHS, 1.4 million, 65,000 buildings, 140 billion pounds of spend, 87,000 vehicles, is that it is big. And so parts of the system, and damn, Bristol is impressive, can run further and faster, and they should, and they do that with our full support and admiration. But parts of the system genuinely will go a little slower, have other challenges, and need a little bit more support. And to be frank, that's where we focus a lot of our attention, because we know that Bristol's got this covered. We know that parts of the country are going to be able to manage this. So, is it fast enough? No. Do I want it to come forward? Yes. Please, though, let us know if we are ever getting in the way of people trying to go faster. I regularly get asked, someone's trying to go faster than the national target on X, Y, or Z. Should we stop them? I sort of laugh and say, gosh, no, we should shout about how proud we are of them. So I hope we never do get in the way there. If we do, we need to get out of the way.
Perfect, thank you. And then we'll come to Roberta Fuller next.
Hi there, Nick. Thanks for taking my question. I wanted to ask the question that I've put in the chat. What partnerships could be developed with startups, venture capital, and entrepreneurs to trial emerging green technologies? I've been trying to do a bit of this down in Cornwall, a little bit piecemeal, and I wondered if there was any central support. I'm thinking particularly about things like anaesthetic gas recycling, potentially hydrogen heating, and other technologies that we can't develop on our own, either with national support or, you know, maybe even reaching out to international companies. And the small companies, the small startups I've spoken to, Sage Tech being one of them down in Paignton, which is anaesthetic gas recycling, find it very difficult to make the business case. And without a case to invest, they can't invest what money they're able to deliver. What central support can you give us to progress that kind of thing?
Cool answer. It's a cool question, rather. Sorry. There's a couple of to try to break down the challenge you're describing, because I think I acutely understand that challenge. And I also don't think the challenge you're describing is unique to sustainability. I think it is something that the NHS, quite frankly, in general, when it comes to innovation and the adoption of new care pathways, gets right and does incredibly well in some areas, and could maybe do with a little more support to do a little bit better in other areas. For our part, let me talk about two approaches I think we are taking. Number one, three approaches. Number one, stimulate the industry by being damn clear about the direction of travel. And there you will have seen and heard, we've been pretty damn clear. The NHS will no longer purchase from anyone that does not meet or exceed our commitments to net zero within the decade. We've followed that up. We mean 1 minute past midnight, April 1st, 2027. And we've laid out the legal case for the qualifying criteria. And we've told everyone well in advance what is coming. The effect of that is to put the guardrails in place. It is to set the stage for that competition, for that innovation, for that collaboration, and say, listen, this is the goal we're running at. Once you've done that, once we've been very, very clear what that is, then we can start to talk about, I think, the collaboration within that. Then there are two separate approaches we've taken. For areas that we are acutely aware that no one else is going to directly solve for us. So let me take double crewed ambulances and niche rapid response vehicles, right? Elon Musk and the world's electric vehicle companies broadly will get us to the point where it is just cost effective. In fact, they're pretty much there for the majority of vehicles you might want to buy in this country already today. Just cost effective to buy an electric vehicle. What they won't do is help us with the innovation for something niche that only we need. And so there we have invested pretty heavily, in fact, with UKRI, with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial something, to innovate. And so you have seen electric rapid response vehicles, 22 out with each of the ambulance trusts across the country, the first of their kind, delivering mental health care rapidly today. And then I'm sure you might have heard us talk about the world's first and the world's second double crewed ambulance. That initially was an innovation project. The thing that really gets me excited is when I get a call from the chief executive of the London Ambulance Service who says, listen, I'm thinking about purchasing a couple of those fully electric ambulances you guys were talking about. And I say, that would be great. 1, 2, 3. No, Nick, 42. When LAS want to start to see some of those innovations. So that works very well for a bespoke thing where we know that there is an obvious challenge. What is harder is some of those areas where we don't have all the answers and we almost don't know what we don't know, right? And there, the approach has probably been one of collaboration with a few of those other innovation bodies across government. We've put quite a bit of money into, the acronym is SBRI, but what it effectively is small business innovation. If you're a small business, you've got a solution, you have a partner within the NHS, you have a clinician, you have someone that is working on this stuff, and you can come together. We have £100,000 out there for you in phase 1 to have a crack at. If you prove that this thing is damn cost effective and we want to buy it, we've got £1 million, and then you start to break into that NHS market. So we had phase 1 of that competition out last year. 10 fantastic examples. In fact, the Isle of Wight benefited from a little bit of that with the world's first drone delivering chemotherapy medication just last week. That was funded out of one of the net zero healthcare innovations. We have phase 2 of that launching 27 August 2022, hot off the press. We've only just decided that this morning. Starting to, break into some of those other areas that we perhaps haven't yet got all the answers to, but we're interested to see what the world comes up with.
Perfect, thank you. So we've got 5 minutes. I think we can take 2 more questions. So I'll come to Laura first, please.
Hi, Nick. Yesterday, MPs were offered a briefing from the Chief Science Officer on climate change. Should the NHS receive a similar briefing?
Oh, cool question. It was variably attended from memory. Let me reinterpret your question a little bit, because I'm not sure that quite goes far enough. I would, if I can reinterpret your question as, should every one of our 1.4 million healthcare professionals be taught about climate change, be taught about their individual role, responsibility, what they need to do to tackle it? Yes, absolutely. In fact, the GMC has open at the moment. There are 114 people on this call, so I'll expect 114 submissions to the GMC. They are asking at the moment, what does it mean to be a good doctor? Their GMP consultation. You can go and find it online. We've already gone and had a conversation with them. HEE have. We know 7, 8, 9, 10 of the Royal Medical and Nursing Colleges have. People need to go and shout and say, listen, a good doctor and a good nurse and a good physio and a good pharmacist tackles this stuff head on. They need to be taught this as core medical practice, as core nursing practice. But I'd go a little bit further, Laura, because I don't think one briefing, one lecture, God, I don't even think one module in med school or in, as part of your training in any part of clinical work is enough. I actually think this problem is more complex than that. I think the best part of the learning that is going to happen here happens by people just having a go, because the answers to what does a healthcare professional have to do to tackle climate change isn't just, oh, it's 1, 2, and 3. It's actually deeply personal to your situation, to whether you're in a rural or urban setting, whether you're in a primary care or acute trust in mental health, to whether you are a nurse, whether you're a physio, whether you are an estates manager. It varies almost entirely. And so I think a lot of the learning there has to actually come from things like that healthier innovation, that healthier futures fund I was talking about. It has to come from people having a go, trying out 1 or 2 projects, and going a little bit further, learning something and then iterating. Fair enough?
Thank you. And we'll come to Francis now.
Thank you. And I'm really thrilled to hear you saying about being deeply personal, because we've been working on really pushing out personalised care, and I think there's a real opportunity to, could we think not just in terms of decarbonising the NHS, but also starting to say, is there an opportunity to link together individuals or individual households suffering from health inequalities with an intervention which could make a real difference to them living longer, which will also help decarbonise? So an example I stuck in the chat would be using personal health budgets to target people with respiratory problems at risk of admission to hospital, to do something right now that's available on the market to do the quickest, simplest thing to lower their carbon emissions in their home and make it warmer and cheaper for them to run. And it's doing those kind of flexible interventions which go beyond just the current NHS delivery, but into doing things which are going to make people live longer, which will also help a broader nationwide net zero approach. That it would be great to work out how could we help get places that want to have a crack at this some support, not just in terms of funding, but also the kind of go for it to make this come alive. The Cornwall folks in the chat, it's fantastic how much they're already doing and keen to work together to explore this some more. We know other areas are interested in it too, but it would be really great to get something else nationally that would make it easy to do.
Sure. I've got 2 responses to that. Number 1, I'm not sure things like that are best run nationally. I think things like that are best run with a bit of local excitement and a bit of local engagement. I think sometimes when you get NHS England and Wellington House involved, we do a good job of slowing things down. Nonetheless, are there things we could do to support? Yeah. Absolutely, Francis. Look, the far more interesting, exciting part of your question really speaks to something that I'm quite interested in fact, have forced James Sanderson, our lovely Director of Personalised Care, and Bola Owolabi, our lovely Director of Healthcare Inequalities, out to a drink with me tonight to talk about exactly the thing that you are talking about, because I think there is a real opportunity there, once in a generation, in fact, where the world is watching fuel poverty, the world is watching the cost of living crisis, they are watching the NHS and how we respond, and we are feeling those burdens, and we are also tackling climate change. And personalised care is one hell of an exciting vehicle, I think, to deliver benefits across that whole suite. I love some of those some of those examples you were talking about. I'm really excited about the sort of fuel poverty, insulation, boiler upgrade, winter pneumonia sort of synergy that you might start to see with shared health budgets. I really like that. It's not quite the same thing, but it's sort of related. I was talking to someone up in the Midlands who effectively managed to crowdsource and then form a community-owned company to power their hospital with solar panels across all of their land. And then from the money they saved, they put that back out into their populations, into vulnerable populations that were suffering from fuel poverty during the winter. Those sorts of things are so cool. They are the perfect example of what it means to bring together our broader responsibility to improve health and health inequalities across the community and to tackle climate change. I'd love nothing more than to see all sorts of stuff out there. My impression is the best way to do that is to do it locally, do it damn well, and shout loud about it.
Nick, thank you so much. It's been lovely to hear from you. I know that you have sparked off several conversations, great ideas, connections, and some really interesting kind of thoughts. So I just want, on behalf of everybody here on this call on the NHS and everybody working in this space, to say thank you so much. It's lovely to have you with us, and we really appreciate your time. And I know we will be talking about inhalers later, so we will continue to talk about that, but it will not be boring because it is an incredible example from Somerset where they're having some extraordinary results that everybody could really learn from. So we will continue to do that. I've been vaguely keeping an idea, a look at the chat. Obviously, as chair, that's a little bit tricky, but everyone's really enthused by your passion and your love of this subject and your caring of it. So thank you so much for coming. I know you've got to go and see the first Chief Sustainability Officers Fellows graduate this afternoon. So that sounds a very eminent graduation ceremony. So have a good time and thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate it. Now we're going to move on and we're going to spend some time in Dorset now. I would like to introduce you to Isabel Bourne, who's the Sustainability Manager from Dorset County Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, and Stuart Lane, Sustainability and Carbon Manager from University Hospitals Dorset NHS Foundation Trust. That's not easy to say in this heat. We're going to be spending 10 minutes talking about how they're engaging the workforce, which is such an exciting project, talking about behaviour change and some of the unexpected benefits they got from working across the ICS. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you, Isabel, and thank you very much. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nikki. It's great to be here with you all. Today, Stuart and I will be telling you about the staff engagement tool we're using called EcoEarn. Next slide, please. So within Dorset, we have 5 NHS trusts employing around 24,000 staff. So as you all know, the challenge is how on earth can we engage with them all and inspire them to take action towards zero carbon in their day-to-day lives and roles? So hence EcoEarn. EcoEarn is a platform developed for staff which encourages members to take positive sustainability and well-being actions and to reduce their carbon emissions. It can be accessed via a web browser on your desktop or on a free app for mobiles. Next slide, please. So once registered, staff record their actions to earn green points and compete alongside colleagues to climb the leaderboard and win prizes for themselves and their team. Next slide, please. The platform is provided by Jump, who are engagement specialists and already work with 16 NH trusts and a variety of other clients. The 5 NHS trusts in Dorset work together to develop the app with Jump, and the first year has been funded by the South West Screener NHS region. Next slide, please. So how does it work? So once you've logged in, you have over 20 actions to choose from. The actions are divided into 5 themes: travel, energy and carbon, health and well-being, waste and recycling, and get involved. Activities include things like switching off equipment, using reusable cups, and a step challenge. Some actions, like the low carbon commute, you opt in and report on weekly. Others, like reading your trust's green plan, are one-offs. For each action you complete, you earn points. Next slide, please. You can see how many points you've earned on the home page. The app also calculates the carbon emissions avoided from your actions. Where it becomes more interesting is the leaderboard. The leaderboard on the platform shows the total number of green points earned by each member, as well as the total points earned for their team, department, and by each of the 5 trusts. So this is creating some nice friendly competition. Next slide, please. But if the satisfaction of being on top of the leaderboard is not enough, there are rewards. So each month we have 5 £20 vouchers awarded to the top individuals across all 5 trusts that have earned the most green points for their actions. And there are also 6 £10 raffle prizes to be won every month for anyone who has logged at least one action that month. The winners can choose vouchers from national and local businesses. Each trust was able to choose their own local businesses, and we took care to ensure they were businesses who live the sustainable values we were trying to encourage. Next slide, please, and handing over to Stuart.
Isabel, thanks for taking us through the features of EcoEarn. What I would like to talk about next is the additional benefits that we were able to glean from working together in partnership across the Dorset system. Next slide, please. So first of all, it was just so much cheaper working this way. When I originally considered Jump services for University Hospitals Dorset, I liked what was on offer, but the annual license costs and the setup costs were just beyond our budget. And I suggested to Jump that they consider a different pricing model for a group of trusts that share a platform. And this wasn't Jump's standard business model, so all parties had to work through the implications of a shared database, such as information governance and shared branding. But after working through these implications, Jump was able to offer a heavily discounted price to the larger trusts, and also agreed to allow the smaller trusts to come on board for an even lower cost. Next slide. We also benefited from pooling our resources. The discounted price was dependent upon Jump being able to implement the system to 5 trusts as if it was one. This was in part enabled by the trust nominating a single project manager to represent the system, to represent the Dorset project. We had weekly project meetings, and each trust was represented by their sustainability lead. The project team also had someone to represent the Dorset system for comms and for information governance. And these honorary lead roles ensured that their counterparts across the system were consulted and in agreement with the decisions taken by the project team. So not only did this avoid duplication of effort, but it also kept the team to a manageable size. Next slide. In order to have maximum flexibility and to future-proof the project, each trust had its own contract with Jump. Initially, I drafted up contract terms with Jump, and these were reviewed and agreed by the other trusts. This stage was quite time-consuming, with many detailed considerations to work through. But by creating a template that each trust could utilize, the procurement process effort was leveraged by all the other partner trusts having that benefit. Next slide, please. And as mentioned, we subscribe to the approach that all staff, independent of which trust they belong to, would log into a single software system. In the setup phase, we defined what engagement activities were of priority to us and the specifics of the elements of behavioural change we wanted to encourage. This not only encouraged us to harmonise our approach through collaboration, but also learn about each trust's existing practices with the opportunity to adopt good practice from each other. So in effect, not only did we standardise our approach, but we also levelled up. Next slide. And of course, all around the country, the creation of integrated care systems is going to bring organisations into more collaborative working relationships. As the Dorset system takes shape, the EcoEarn project has provided an opportunity to engage across NHS partners in a way that goes beyond just imagining what we can do together. We've actually made a practical, tangible start. EcoEarn is helping us engage with staff to bring about the change that's needed, whether it be carbon reduction or improving health and well-being needs. The project has given us an opportunity to pull some anchor institution levers, and the voucher rewards offered to EcoEarn prize winners are supporting hand-selected local sustainable organisations. Next slide. So this project has helped to set the stage for our next steps. And the Brazilians have a fitting expression. A good friendship is born from eating a bag of salt together. And in other words, it takes time and there's an element of shared suffering. Of course, like any project, EcoEarn hit some challenges along the way, and at times we had to compromise. But we all went into the project with our eyes open. We knew we had to pull together, and we worked through any challenges in a really positive way. And a stronger sense of team has emerged during the project, which gives us a really good platform from which to do further work together. And in fact, we're already partway through another joint project, a lift share scheme for Dorset NHS partners. So my recommendation is, if you're not doing it already, scan for the projects that you can do at scale and come together to make them happen. Thanks very much. And if there's still time, we can take a couple of questions.
Thank you, Stuart. That's fantastic. Lots of really interesting learning there, as if, you know, EcoEarn wasn't inspiring enough. All of those kind of other things that you've learned from doing this project together, I think we can all congratulate you on and learn. I think we've got time for kind of one or two questions. Tobin, what's been coming out through the chat? Has anything come up?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. I'm not sure whether it's Stuart or Isabel, but here we go. How do you calculate the CO2 equivalents avoided, or the amount of greenhouse gas that's produced from each of those activities?
So Jump actually have got emissions factors calibrated against the activity, so that's taken care of by the database.
Okay, so that sounds like a simple sort of, you know, we take that, we count that, and we add it up to whatever that is against each person and their activities. And that leads me on to the next question, which is, you described some specific activities. Will there be more activities coming onto the system, or that people can count against their total?
Yeah, so we've started off with 20, and we've got a periodic review where we can refresh the system and add to those. We can take ones away, and we have a dashboard where we can look to see where we're getting the most traction, the most engagement. So for example, this summer we're doing some work for the Dorset system about sustainable QI training, and we're going to be bringing that into the Jump system, so we can signpost from EcoEarn to those training programs. And then, so for example, we can have another activity where you can score some points for saying I've done the training. Now I've proposed a project idea. Next activity will be, have you actually participated in the project? And then finally, have you written it up and helped with the spread of that project? So I think we can get a suite of new activities just out of that one set, out of that one sort of area, if you like, around sustainable QI. And I think you can sort of take that analogy and apply it to a lot of different areas.
Excellent, thank you very much. There's some questions coming through late, so I thought I'll just sneak one more in if Nikki allows me, but because it's kind of interesting. It's around the competitive nature of the programme, and so someone's asked here, have you found that sort of approach in terms of the competition, presumably it's friendly competition, has improved staff morale and helped people to get engaged with it, and or aren't some people a bit reticent to get involved because they see that competitive element?
I don't know if Isabel, if you wanted to add anything. What we can see certainly early on is certain teams have run away quite quickly with this, and it tends to map in where we know we've got some enthusiastic staff members. So, for example, big shout out to Tracy Lyons and our pharmaceutical optimization lead and sustainability lead, and I know that she's rallying the troops across the system in the pharmacy, but equally there'll be other areas where people are sort of clustering together, and I think I'd like to think that there'll be a bit of a snowballing effect here. It is early days, but that's what the system is designed to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave it there.
Yes, we have to move on. But Stuart, Isabel, thank you so much. Really interesting stuff. And I know that we've got a lot more information about EcoEarn with YouTube videos and tutorials, etc., that are coming out in the post-conference pack. So much more information there. And I know you'll kindly talk to other people if they want to contact you. So thank you so much. Right, well, we need to move on now to Luke Champion. Luke is the Energy and Sustainability Manager at Avon Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership NHS Trust. Luke's going to talk us through how capital funding has really decarbonised the estate and saved money. And I'm hoping that he'll also bring us a flavour too of how the green agenda supports mental health. So can I move over to you now, Luke, please?
Okay, thanks everyone. So yeah, I'm just here to explain how we used BEIS funding, or administered by SALEX, to sort of put us right at the top of the agenda really in terms of propelling our trust into decarbonising in a really big way. So I hope you'll enjoy coming on this, learning a bit about our journey as well. So yeah, if I could have the next slide, please. So a bit about AWP, as we're known, because long acronyms tend to make your breath run out. So I'm going to call us AWP, but you can read that we're longer there. We're a mental health care provider, delivering care for people in the Baines catchment area, Bristol, North Somerset, South Gloss, Swindon and Wiltshire. So we're quite spread out, very big mental health trust. We've got over 4,000 staff, and they deliver services from over 90 locations across a large geographical region. We do have a climate emergency group that is well attended by a lot of our staff and directly attended by several of our interested service users as well. And that's been a really good step forward as part of our sort of net zero agenda. And interestingly enough, our service users actively work with us to develop our green plan, and they also helped us to secure 11k of grant funding for recent green social prescribing projects as well. So that's a real step forward for us. So if I could have the next slide, please. So a bit about our journey last financial year. We switched all of our electricity supplies to a green tariff. We also formally declared a climate emergency and set our net zero target to 2030. So we're joining with several organisations in the Bristol area for that. We also got a big win. We managed to get £4.5 million from the SALEX fund administered by BEIS to go towards decarbonising our estate with various capital projects. So I'll talk more about that in a bit. We also created our Trust Green Plan as well. So quite a busy year. So if I could have the next slide, please. I'll take you through some examples, some pictorial examples of what we did. So here's Callington Road. We put some LED lighting in there, and our LED lighting part of funding was totaled about 2.1 million on the fund. So next slide, please. Solar PV, we just over £1 million we got for solar PV at various sites. This is one of our sites at Green Lane in Devizes. Next slide, please. This is a glamorous picture of 2 heat pump units at Green Lane. We had 3 sites with heat pumps, and it came to a total of 1.1 million. So next slide, please. Here's another invigorating photo of a building management system. They're not particularly glamorous, are they? But they do a good job. And we spent about 223,000 on various BMS systems across the estate. Go next slide, please. We did a bit about aircon conditioning controls, pump controls, and also some pipework insulation as well. So yeah, there's 23k on that. Next slide again. Some challenges, as ever with a big capital project like this. COVID reared its head, so we had quite a few supply chain delays, especially on the heat pumps and a bit on the LED supply. We took a good approach, I think, with keeping our clinical colleagues on side, having plenty of engaging meetings to explain what work was being carried out, especially with the LED work where we had to go into live wards to carry out the work. We do have a good track record, our trust, of actually engaging, because we've got a very good relationship with project management consultants who we work very closely with. So that was a real good thing, I think. I think we learned a lot there, and we've carried our experience through to get to the success. Positive impacts, when people see solar panels, it does get people talking, especially LEDs as well. When we've replaced old lighting, people were talking positively about the project, which was really nice to hear. We got some positive news coverage in the trust with sort of local media, which is quite nice. And I've also been quite active in sharing this as well with other public sector organisations and, of course, other wider organisations as well. So it's been a good journey for us. I think that's the end. Well, there might be another slide. Oh yeah, there is another slide. Yeah, that's good. I won't go through all this in detail because I know we're pushed for time, but you can see here that we have made some good carbon savings and cost savings, more so on the gas because we did a lot more electricity demand reduction work on LEDs and heat pumps and things. And also solar PV has enabled us to obtain huge savings on our electricity supply. Gas, not so much, but we've got good carbon savings there. And it's an important point to finish on that although we have made really good savings, especially with costs, the recent kilowatt unit cost increases that we're all suffering from will mean we need to do a lot more work as time goes on. So this is just a starting point for our trust. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions now. That's the end of my presentation. I'm sorry, I'm always too ahead of myself. What are we doing? Yes, we're doing a lot more work effectively. We've submitted more funding bids, so hopefully we'll get something back on that. And we've made strategic decisions not to fit new gas boilers. So yeah, we have been doing quite a lot of work. I think next slide. Yes, that's it. Sorry.
Thank you, Lou. That's wonderful. A gallop through the estate there. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Tobin, what questions have we got?
Yeah, couple of questions for you. One's a kind of selfish question from our team point of view, and that is, can we use your expertise, contacts, etc., and just general knowledge around delivering some of this to share across the region? Because that would be really helpful with some of the plans that are coming up in other parts.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think our trust would absolutely support that. We're all up for sharing our challenges and also our successes. Really, so absolutely, yeah, no problem.
And just another quick question about challenges. How disruptive was it? I mean, you said a lot of it happened in COVID time, so I don't know how busy, the settings were at the time. But how disruptive was it to the operational sort of running of the services where a lot of stuff was being installed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we found the most impact with the LED lighting projects because a lot of our estate where we had LEDs installed were actually, live mental health hospitals. So in terms of disruption, there was a measurable amount, but because we were using time-served contractors who've done previous work in NHS and they're used to working in mental health, we're a lot more, in some ways, mental health's a lot more challenging to do a similar project because you have to take account of a lot of patient needs, maybe a bit more in some ways than an standard acute hospital. So jobs take longer, probably 2 times as long. So yeah, I think we found the most challenge in the LED refit. All the other projects, not so much, because a lot of them happened outside the building. So, but LEDs, definitely, there was disruption that we had to manage. But on the whole, I think we probably did a pretty good job, I think, overall.
Useful intel, thank you. You
did a great job, Luke. And thank
Thanks.
you so much for sharing that with us. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, look, we are nearly to time. It's 2 o'clock. We're going to take a 5-minute comfort break. We're starting back here at 2:05. I'm going to get a banana like Djokovic in the final of Wimbledon to keep my momentum going. Please don't go anywhere. In the second half, we're going to be hearing from colleagues from Cornwall and from Somerset and from Guy Singh-Watson, who's the CEO of Riverford Organics, or was until he made it into an employee-owned company. And we're also hearing from Richard Schofield, who is leading this work in the Southwest. So don't go away. We'll be back at 2:05. And in the meantime, there'll also be a Menti question for you. Thank you. Right, thank you, everybody. I hope you managed to get a ice cream or a cup of tea or something in that 5-minute break, and you are all back now. And thank you for bearing with us. Thanks very much for participating in the Menti. That's brilliant. And also I can see some of you on Twitter, which is already making me laugh. So really appreciate that. Wonderful. Now I'd like to start back by taking us to Cornwall, and with Ros Davis, who's the General Manager and the lead sustainability person at the Royal Cornwall Hospitals Trust. And I think it's fair to say that Cornwall is really leading this work. And when Ros isn't on the BBC News, she's being featured in Forbes magazine. And what really shines through to me in Cornwall is the kind of passion of the clinical and the non-clinical staff. Follow them on Twitter. They will always show you their great initiatives, and they're incredibly inspiring. So, Ros, if I can come to you and you can tell us about your war on waste. Thank you.
Sure. Now, what I should say is BBC, I was petrified, and it wasn't pleasant at all. I really scared myself. But anyway, we'll go through that. So my name's Ros Davis. I'm a general manager working here at the Royal Cornwall Hospital. So what we were asked to do is just go through our PPE and how we've got on with that. So we could go to the first slide. So we declared our climate emergency back in October 2020. And part of that, we issued reusable masks for non-clinical areas. Now, what I should make really clear is back then, we didn't really have COVID down here in Cornwall. We were watching the rest of the country, sitting here absolutely scared because it wasn't down here yet, wondering, are we going to get away with it because we're Cornwall? We didn't, but that is how we were allowed to bring in reusable masks at the time where everyone else was in your single-use masks, because we did a risk assessment and actually COVID wasn't down here that badly at the time. So we went into reusable masks. Now, around December, so these came out in October, around December, our procurement team did a bit of an audit to look at our usage of single-use masks, and we dropped by something like 45%, and nothing had happened at that point. We were still doing theatre. We hadn't stopped our elective work. The only difference, the only thing we'd introduced was the reusable masks. So it just shows how great reusable masks are if you can adopt them. So then 2021, it was time for new masks. So we teamed up with Revolution Zero, which I'm sure many of you have worked with, and we introduced seagrass masks. Now, the reason we did this was because Revolution Zero were really keen to kind of invest in our community. So down here in Cornwall, we're really lucky that we have 3 seagrass beds, and seagrass, I say, eats more carbon than a rainforest because I can never get out the word sequestration. I try, but it never quite comes out. And I think I did do it right that time, but that's why I say eats. So it eats more carbon than a rainforest. So that's why we went to seagrass masks. And again, we gave them to all our staff. So that's 8,000 staff. And that was the seagrass story. So a donation went to help preserve our seagrass beds. Then this year, I'm not sure anyone else, I think we are possibly the only trust at the minute that's gone back into masks. So COVID has spiked massively for us down here in Cornwall. So as a team, the execs decided we go back into masks. So we teamed up again with Revolution Zero, and what we wanted to do was again highlight and educate to our staff and visitors, give them a message, if you like. So kind of acting as the anchor institution that Dorset has talked about. And what we did was depict our wildlife this year. So this is really rubbish, but down here in Cornwall, we're losing our rabbits. You know, a normal rabbit that as a kid you would have seen running around everywhere. I think it's 60. We now have 60% less than we used to 20 years ago, something like that. That's absolutely rubbish. But we've also losing wall butterflies. It does say otters, but I have to say I've never seen an otter my whole life. I know they're there, just never seen one. But rabbits, you can't get away from that. That's pretty bad. So anyway, it just shows that actually this is what we've done down here in Cornwall, not the rest of the counties. We have done that. So we need to take responsibility and start looking at how we team up healthcare, normal life with the environment around us. So that's our story for non-clinical areas. But then we thought, let's see if we can do clinical areas. So again, we teamed up with Revolution Zero and we brought in the climate change masks. And these came to clinical areas and we were thinking, where could we do them for a trial which was safe? And we worked with NHS England for this, and we picked our ophthalmology outpatient team. And the reason we picked those was because they didn't do AGPs, so no aerosol generating procedures. It was about the safest place we could do it. So we did that, as I said, working with NHS England, and we learned a lot from their input. It was really useful. Certainly how to implement mask dispensers. That might sound a bit boring, but really important for IPAC. And the one thing I learned, never upset IPAC. You're just on a loser if that happens. So always keep them happy, always do what they say, always engage and work with them. So we trialled it there, it went really well, and now we've got them in one of our units in endoscopy. So again, working with Revolution Zero, climate stripes, that's where they are at the moment. Then something really exciting happened. So because of our relationship with, I don't want to keep saying the name, but Revolution Zero, they applied for one of the grants, the SBRI grants, and they won. And they approached us to see if we could help as a pilot site to introduce a hip operation because of the high carbon footprint of a hip operation down here in Cornwall. So could we do one operation, full reusable textiles? So we said we'd love to. Who wouldn't? So they came down to help us. We worked with NHS England, and again we implemented this down at St Michael's Hospital in Hale. So down here in Cornwall we have 3 hospitals, and St Michael's Hospital is our orthopaedic unit. So we did a procedure, it went really well. The unit absolutely love it. So it's 4 theatres down there, and now we're going on to the next generation. So we've done that trial, and now it's what do we do next? So we're just again working with the team to see if we can scale that up to doing this in one whole theatre. So full reusable textiles, gowns, drapes, masks. Can we do it? Of course we can. It's just going to take a bit of time, but very exciting for us down here in Cornwall. And again, you know, Cornwall considered the little bit at the end of the UK. They're doing really well, and the staff are embracing reusables. It's going really well for us, so we're very lucky. Next slide, please. So here we are. There's the bid that we did. So Mr. Mark Norton, our orthopaedic consultant surgeon, undertook the case with full reusables, drapes, gowns, hats, the bits that go over your feet, your shoes, and we did the first hip operation. Next slide, please. So what else do we do down here? So before we went into reusable masks, we contacted a company called TCG to get a machine called a SteriMelt. And I'm sure some of you have heard about this. So basically, the staff noticed the massive piles of blue masks piling up at reception. And, you know, as I said, because we didn't have COVID down here, it was so frightening for us not knowing what was coming, that it was a way we felt, or the staff felt, that they could almost fight COVID back. That sounds a bit silly, but it empowered them to do something productive. So TCG helped us with the trials of melting masks. So now we collect our masks from around the hospital, and we melt them into big blue blocks, which then go off and are collected and go off to be made into benches and toolboxes and litter pickers. So we teamed up again with a local organisation called Beach Guardian and Waterhall, which are an organisation down here, a company that make litter pickers. And together we gave 2 litter pickers to every college and primary and secondary school around Cornwall. And that's how I got on the BBC. But like I said, really frightened. This is not my thing at all. Didn't know what to do with myself. But it was so important to give hope to everybody that, look, there's a solution. There's a solution to blue masks. Look, Royal Cornwall, look, we did this. Isn't it great? And it really did give momentum and got us to move along. But giving litter pickers and being on the 1 o'clock news, that is pretty cool now. It just wasn't at the time. So moving on. Next slide, please. What else do we do? So we've got reusable gowns in sterile services, who are the most amazing sterile services team. So they help us huge amounts with all these things. And we're just about to do reusable gowns at our hospital in Penzance for day case, and that's with Ellis. So we already have our scrubs through them, our normal scrub contractors that do the laundry, and they also supply reusable gowns. So that's what we'll be doing with them. We've just signed the contract this morning, actually, so that's good news. And we also have reusable aprons in endoscopy as well. So we're trying to create our green endoscopy, because obviously another big carbon hotspot. We're doing quite a lot there, but PPE is one of the easier hits in endoscopy. So that's what we're going after. Next slide. Any questions? And I talk a lot, so I'm sorry if I babbled. I've always done it. It's normal. But I'll try to be quiet now.
Roz, it was very inspiring, and I'm sure that there are questions. Tobin, what have we got coming in?
Roz, that was awesome. Yeah, I've got a few questions. The first one is, what would be your main piece of advice for anyone else who's starting on that journey of looking to do more in terms of recycling some of those items that you described, gowns, masks, etc.?
Yeah, do you know,
top tips?
So easy option is hopefully, I think most hospitals have Ellis, which is your laundry, because the contract's already there. You don't have to set up new ones. They monitor them, so you know how many times they've been through the wash, and and they're cheaper. And I know that because I've just done the business case. So you even make a SIP saving. For anyone who doesn't know, that's cost improvement. All hospitals are asked to do it, so that's a good one to do. But we're just getting our seagrass masks back now to send them off to make them into other products. Now we'll just say we did try ourselves making some climate change masks into a mattress. But it didn't go awfully well, so we ended up giving that to the Red Cross. That gave it to in Derriford. Plymouth. That gave it to the local refugee camp. So there are things you can make them into, and what we certainly don't want is them being thrown away and that's the end of it. That is not what we want to do. So I'm going to be outrageous, but say the thing that we're really going to start working on down here is to say, maybe not stop recycling plastic, but hardly any of it goes, because people don't put it in the right plastic containers, and the bale is dead, and then it's gone for nothing. Reuse and repurpose. That is what we're going out with. So certainly the masks will be reused, but stick to gowns, I would say, because it's easy and you should already have the contracts.
Awesome. Thank you very much. There's another one here. Do you think the rollout of reusable PPE has increased the awareness of the green agenda?
Well, I would hope so, but the problem is with reusable is it's very expensive. So it's only trials mostly, which is a shame. And I think until people in procurement that do a fantastic job, and they will be, without a doubt, they will be looking at it. Well, I know they are, actually. I don't even know why I said that. I know they are. We need to do it on bulk. So it's not, that's the way it needs to go, because doing it yourself, it's just too expensive.
And one last question, just quickly, is there any answer to disposable curtains at the moment? Do you know? Maybe a bit specific.
Well, funnily enough, there's two options that we've come across. The first one is we're looking at reusable curtains. We've just not got that far yet. I've had it approved by IPAC, so as long as they're washed, that our IPAC team has said that's fine. I've just not actually brought them yet, which is really rubbish, but I will do. I just need to do the business case to go with it, and there are massive savings in that as well. So what I could say, if everyone wants to give me like 3 months, I will do the case because I have to, and then if they want it off me, have it. Don't do your own, or at least take mine and rip it off all you like. I don't care, because no one has time and you don't want to keep redoing the same work over again. Or there's a machine that's very similar to the Sterimelt curtain melt. But again, it's kind of melting plastic, and I'm getting more and more nervous about doing that all the time. I just don't want to, where at least a curtain, when it's dead, you could make it into maybe dungarees, like The Sound of Music or something. I don't know, but there's options, isn't there? And it's not plastic.
I think, Roz, that we're going to get to know you a bit better from passing on all your knowledge to other people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can't get off mute.
Oh,
Hi everybody, sorry, I'm having a bit of broadband trouble, which is just the absolute perfect thing to happen when you are running a seminar. Look, if you can hear me, I'm going to quickly pass over to Steve and Helen. Steve is Medicines Manager and Medicine Safety Officer, and Dr. Helen Kingston is a GP from Froome, a Senior Partner from Froome Medical Practice. Medicines make up 25% of the carbon footprint, and it's vital to reduce it. So if I could quickly hand over to Steve and Helen, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Moore, Senior Clinical Pharmacist with Somerset, NHS Somerset ICS. I've got to remember that name because we've just changed. Yeah, I have a passion for respiratory prescribing, of which inhalers is a huge part. And I'm joined today by Dr. Helen Kingston, who's the Senior Partner at Froome, a huge practice, and they've made a huge contribution to Somerset's overall figures. So, we could try and give you an idea in a couple of minutes of how we've done things in Somerset and how we've got some good results. Have I got any slides to be shown? Or should I share mine?
It's okay, Steve. They should be coming up.
Okie doke.
I've shared them for you, Steve. Can you just confirm if you can see them?
No, I can't. I mean, if everyone else can see them, I've got them on a separate screen, so that's okay.
Can everybody
else see them?
Everybody can see them, Steve. Yeah, and yes. It says that the first one we're starting with started with inhaler alignment. So if that's your first one too, we can go from there.
Well, yes, it is. Yes. So I'll just scroll through mine at the same time as you scroll through yours. So basically, in Somerset, I've got a passion for inhaler prescribing. So I, for many years, have put together a group, a forum, if you like, of all my nurses and GPs with a special interest in respiratory, and we have a very sort of convivial. I can see it now. A convivial approach to getting inhaler prescribing right to a point where we can almost accept criticism easily. So if people aren't doing what they should be doing in terms of respiratory outcomes, then we share that information in a kind way, and it does sort of urge people to improve their performance. So basically, before the green approach came out, we started with inhaler alignment because, as we know, inhalers are not used very effectively. The techniques are pretty awful. Most asthmatics and COPD patients have two types of inhalers, one to prevent usually and one to treat. And quite often they were different. One was a pressurized inhaler and the other would be a dry powder inhaler. And the technique is almost opposite. So we started with that. We tried to align patients to take one or the other, preferably a DPI. And as a result of that, we got more people using salbutamol, which is the reliever inhaler, as a dry powder. We've used the Easyhaler range. They're carbon neutral in themselves. Next slide, please. And we became the biggest users of Easyhalers nationally. They have a fantastic range, and we've used them. I don't get any commission from them, but I think they're a really good inhaler. Next slide, please. And then we discovered when we really looked into the sort of the CO2 element of some of these inhalers. Some of you may be familiar with this from the greenhaler.org, and basically, one Ventolin inhaler, the most common device that's used, has the same carbon footprint as a car traveling from London to Sheffield, whereas the dry powder is about 4 miles rather than 175 miles. That's 28 kilograms of CO2, 16,000 litres. So it made us think, well, actually, there are millions of inhalers out there, probably most of them sitting in people's cupboards or drawers and what have you. So, what can we do about that, really? Next slide, please. So, my distribution list works really well because we share ideas and, we show league tables of performance, things like that. And, it encourages people to get better, shall we say. There's nothing like a bit of friendly rivalry in league tables, I think. And I offer strugglers, people who are having difficulty getting people to switch across to better inhalers, that support. And, when you think back to, and I'm old enough to remember when we replaced CFCs in inhalers because they burnt a big hole in the ozone layer. We replaced them with something called HFAs, which don't burn a hole in the ozone layer, but they have a sort of a 3,500 times more carbon effect than carbon dioxide itself. So it horrifies me, really. So what we've been looking at is reducing the overall over-prescribing of inhalers. So really scrutinizing whether people actually need inhalers or whether the pharmacy is repeating their inhalers every month, whether they need them or not. And seeing if patients want to try a DPI. So again, the nurses are in an ideal position to, when they do the reviews, to say, well, actually, do you know that a dry powder is much better for the environment and it's easier to use? And we've got a lot of people onto dry powders because of that. If not, and an MDI, that's the pressurized inhalers, if they're the ones that must do, then we change them to low propellant versions. There are some salbutamol ones that have less propellant but the same dose, same number of doses. And avoiding the particularly bad inhalers like flutiform, which has a particularly nasty HFA in it. So we reduced that as well. Next slide, please. And the results speak for themselves, really. This is where this is from open prescribing. Some of you, Ben Goldacre's site. We monitor this. There's a number of indicators where Somerset is the best. There's 2 of them out of 4 that we are best in England. This one here, I think we're still about 10th best in England, but getting better, I think. And this is the mean carbon impact of per salbutamol inhaler prescribed. So again, moving to dry powders primarily and moving to low propellant ones where we can. So basically, yeah, you can see that we've made a big improvement. And the next and last slide, I believe. And this is our percentage of MDIs against DPIs. Nationally, it's been increasing despite all of the efforts to try and get it back down. I think we have just about turned that corner for the last 5 months. It's heading down. And we have actually now, DPIs are now in the majority, 51% against 49, not much, but it's getting better. But, in England, we still have 55% aerosols, MDI. So, yeah, we're getting there. And, like I said, friendly rivalry between the nurses and the GPs works a treat. That's how it's worked for me anyway. I'll hand over to Helen now.
Okay. So I just briefly wanted to reflect on our learning as a team. So very much what we've done is try and engage the whole team in this. There's no point having one champion moving everybody in one direction and others saying, oh, I don't really agree with that. Trying to embed sustainability into our culture, embed it into routine care. So those letters that go out for asthma recalls automatically including information about the benefits of changing to DPIs, emphasising the co-benefits to patients, checking our own progress, and then celebrating as a team our successes. Next slide. So this is our carbon impact for the whole practice, and you can see that inhalers are a huge chunk of that. The blue and the orange from 12 to 2 o'clock. But other prescribed medication obviously makes a huge difference as well. Next slide. And we try as much as possible, as I'm sure everyone does, to follow a triple bottom line of making sure that this is benefiting us, the planet, and NHS finances. Next slide. So trying to have better asthma care is our key objective, not just the lowest carbon inhaler, but those co-benefits of dry powder inhalers, that they're simpler to use. You get more medication into the lungs than you would with an MDI used poorly. That leads to better asthma control and fewer side effects. And of course, they've got the counters on them so people know when they're running out. Next slide. And using the resources that are available to us. So Greener practice have got these great asthma videos, very short clips that I can thoroughly recommend to you. One around general asthma care, and next slide, the second one around explaining inhalers. So trying to make use of those great resources that are available. And the very last slide is just a little reflection from July last year to July 20 to April this year. Our total salbutamol carbon impact as a practice by reducing the number of inhalers and swapping to lower propellant and DPIs where we can has really made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Steve. It was really informative. Just one question that's cropped up is how long have you been on this journey, given that there are other people that are probably not quite as far along in terms of making those switches and changes? And what's the most effective way to engage, you know, the clinicians, the GPs and the pharmacists in looking to review inhalers for asthmatics and others?
I think the main way is by making sure that we're doing it as a team. The thing that undermines those enthusiasts are if somebody comes into another GP and they say, oh, they're no good, I'll swap you back to what you were doing before. So I think it is that whole team approach and a feeling that if you make that effort and get people on side, that everybody else is going to be singing from the same voice.
Thank you.
I think from my point of view, I mean, we set up this network of nurses and GPs with a particular interest in respiratory many years ago. So we've been sharing ideas for a long time, you know, around not just about the carbon side of things, but obviously best treatments, alignments of inhalers, even combining inhalers. You know, if patients are on 3 different inhalers, you could actually reduce that to 2, and again, that's a saving of carbon as well. And it sort of makes sense, and it's easier for the patient. And it's just, but the problem is that these things have just evolved, and nobody's really looked at them. And until I pointed out and say, actually, you've got 6 patients here who could move to a triple inhaler. Oh yeah, that's right. And then, you know, it gets done. You know, and especially if, you know, if you target individual nurses and say, this is your practice, you know, can you do something about it? It's worked. It really has worked. But, you know, it's because I have a laid back approach, but with a a strong element of, you know, you really ought to be doing this sort of thing. And it's worked. It's really worked.
And Steve's team are also very good at putting pop-up messages. So one of the barriers to swapping inhalers is trying to work out the steroid dose for fine powder and normal powder and equivalents. So we've now got pop-ups when you prescribe the wrong inhaler. The pop-up tells you what you should be prescribing instead, because they all start with slightly different names. If people aren't familiar, it just gives them that confidence that they're aligning correctly.
Thank you.
I now have the unenviable task of trying to sum up all those contributions in about 30 seconds. First of all, to say thanks as well as to Guy, but to all our presenters today. Every single presentation was inspiring in its own right. Lovely to see Ros from RCHT as enthusiastic as ever. I sit here speaking from Cornwall, so I'm very happy that there is so many amazing things happening in Cornwall. And obviously to the team for organising the event, Nikki, Toby, and Charlotte, of course. And I was trying to follow Walt Whitman, so I'm gonna misappropriate Mao Zedong, to whom the quote "let a thousand flowers bloom" is attributed. It was actually slightly malign in his case. We're going to take it as being an optimistic view of the world. The NHS is typically against the 1,000 flowers blooming because, as Nick said at the beginning, quite often as a national system, we try to make sure that we know exactly what everybody's doing all the time. My sense is that on this agenda, we need to let the 1,000 flowers bloom, and that's exactly what we've seen today. And one thought I've always had about gardeners is I've never met a gardener who refuses to give you a cutting from their garden. And it feels a little bit like today's event has been 100 odd very enthusiastic, passionate gardeners all growing their blooms, and I bet every single one of them would share a cutting with every one of the 100 odd people and many more beyond. And I do hope that that's the spirit that we continue on in this journey towards net zero. And as NHS England, I think one of the most important thing that we can do is to get out of your way and just allow you to grow more thousands of blooms and share them amongst yourselves over time. And it was a genuinely inspiring and humbling experience to listen to everybody today. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you again soon.